Somewhere between the rolling limestone hills and the wide open skies of central Texas, a family made a decision, not just to raise animals, but to build something that would outlast them. This is Hill Country Axis, and this is the story of how it began. Welcome to Chapter 1, the Executive Summary. Before we talk about deer, before we talk about pastures and genetics and breeding programs, we have to talk about why. Because Hill Country Axis was never meant to be just another ranch. It was designed from day one as a long-term family enterprise, one built around the careful, deliberate stewardship of Axis deer genetics. Axis deer are not native to Texas. They came from the forests of India, prized for their striking coats, their resilience, and their unique place in the Hill Country's exotic wildlife heritage. Over generations, Texas ranchers have shaped small, thoughtful breeding programs into something larger, a genuine industry built on patience and precision. Hill Country Axis exists to be part of that legacy and to elevate it. The purpose of this enterprise is simple to state, but not simple to live out. It is to build a sustainable, multi-generational operation rooted in sound genetics, ethical land stewardship, and family ownership. Not a quick flip, not a short-term investment, a foundation meant to be handed down. That purpose shapes every decision. It means prioritizing herd health over herd size. It means investing in genetic diversity even when the market rewards flash over function. It means thinking in decades, not fiscal quarters. The philosophy behind Hill Country Axis rests on three guiding principles. The first is stewardship. The land, the water, the herd, none of it belongs to any one generation. It is held in trust, cared for, and passed forward in better condition than it was received. The second principle is discipline. Genetics don't reward impatience. Good breeding decisions take years to prove out, and Hill Country Axis is committed to the discipline that requires resisting shortcuts, tracking data carefully, and letting results, not hype, guide the program forward. And the third principle is family. This isn't a faceless operation. It is a family enterprise, meaning the decisions made here are personal. They carry names and legacies, not just spreadsheets and quarterly reports. It's worth sitting with what that actually means day to day. When a decision has to be made about which buck to pair with which doe, it isn't made by a committee chasing a quarterly target. It's made by people who will still be living with the consequences of that choice 5, 10, 15 years from now. That changes the calculus entirely. It means being willing to wait an extra season for the right genetic match rather than the convenient one. It means treating a disappointing year not as a crisis, but as data, one data point in a much longer story. Together, these principles form the operating system for everything Hill Country Axis does, the guiding logic behind every fence line, every breeding decision, every acre of land under management. Consider what that looks like in practice on a normal Tuesday on the ranch. It isn't glamorous. It's walking a fence line to check for wear before it becomes a breach. It's reviewing breeding records instead of just trusting memory. It's noticing which pastures are showing stress and adjusting rotation before the damage compounds. None of these actions make headlines, but strung together year after year, they're the actual substance of stewardship. Not the idea of it, but the practice. In the chapters ahead, we'll dig into the specific mission, the founding story, and the vision that ties it all together. But it starts here, with this foundation, a purpose, a philosophy, and a family committed to seeing it through. Chapter 2, the Project Charter. If the executive summary told you why Hill Country Axis exists, the Project Charter tells you how it actually operates. The mission, the vision, and the values that turn a good intention into a working ranch. Let's start with the mission. The mission of Hill Country Axis is to responsibly breed and manage Axis deer with a focus on genetic excellence, land health, and long-term family ownership. Notice that word responsibly. It's doing a lot of work in that sentence. Responsible breeding means selecting for traits that improve the herd over generations, not just chasing whatever trend the market favors this season. Responsible land management means treating the hill country terrain as a partner, not a resource to be extracted. And responsible ownership means building something durable enough that it can be passed from one generation of the family to the next, without losing what made it valuable in the first place. That distinction matters more than it might seem. A responsible breeding decision might not be the flashiest choice on paper, but it strengthens the herd's foundation for the next 20 years. Responsible land management might mean leaving a pasture fallow a season longer than a neighbor would, because the soil needs it. None of this is complicated in principle. It simply requires the discipline to choose the slower, sounder path when a faster one is available. The vision extends that mission outward. Hill Country Axis aims to become a respected name in Axis deer genetics, known not for the loudest marketing, but for the quality of its herd and the integrity of its practices. It's a vision built on reputation earned slowly, the way real reputations always are, through consistency, transparency, and results that speak for themselves over years, not weeks. It's worth pausing on what a credible reputation actually requires in an industry like this one. It isn't built through a single impressive season or a viral photo of an exceptional animal. It's built through years of buyers and neighbors and fellow breeders seeing the same values show up consistently: healthy stock, honest representation, fair dealing. Reputation in that sense isn't a marketing objective at all. It's simply what accumulates when the values are real and sustained over time. To hold that mission and vision together, Hill Country Axis operates according to a set of core values. Integrity comes first, doing right by the animals, the land, and the people involved, even when no one's watching. Then comes excellence, a refusal to settle for mediocre genetics or careless practices when better is possible. Stewardship shows up here again, echoing the philosophy from Chapter 1, a reminder that this land and this herd are a responsibility, not just an asset. And finally, family. Every strategic decision is filtered through the question of what serves the next generation, not just this one. Those values aren't just words on a page. They translate into concrete strategic objectives. Build a healthy, genetically diverse Axis deer herd. Develop land management practices that improve the property over time rather than depleting it. Create sustainable systems and documentation so the operation can be run and understood by the next generation of family members. And establish Hill Country Axis as a credible, respected voice within the broader exotic wildlife and ranching community. Of course, objectives only matter if you can measure whether you're hitting them. So the charter lays out clear measures of success. Herd health metrics tracked consistently over time, genetic diversity maintained and improved across breeding cycles, land conditions monitored and kept in or restored to excellent shape, and the ranch's reputation and relationships within the industry growing steadily. All of this is anchored by a single governing principle that runs through the entire charter. Long-term thinking always outweighs short-term gain. It's the same discipline we talked about in Chapter 1, now written into the operating structure itself. Every choice from a breeding pair to a land improvement project gets run through that filter. Will this still make sense in 10 years? In 20? If the answer is yes, it moves forward. If it's just a shortcut dressed up as an opportunity, it doesn't. There's a broader lesson buried in that governing principle, one that extends beyond ranching entirely. Most failures of long-term projects, whether it's a business, a piece of land, or a family legacy, don't come from one catastrophic mistake. They come from an accumulation of small, reasonable-sounding shortcuts, each one easy to justify in isolation, each one slightly eroding the foundation. Hill Country Axis was built from its very first fence post as a rejection of that pattern, not through some heroic act of willpower, but through a simple standing question, asked over and over again at every decision point. Does this still make sense in 20 years? That question, repeated enough times, is what a legacy actually looks like from the inside. That's the charter: mission, vision, values, objectives, and the measures that keep everyone honest. But a charter alone doesn't explain where any of this came from. For that, we have to go back to the beginning, to the person and the story that started it all. Chapter 3, the founder story. Every ranch has a deed. Not every ranch has a reason. Hill Country Axis has both, and the reason came first. The founding of Hill Country Axis wasn't a single dramatic moment. No lightning bolt, no overnight decision. It was something closer to a slow realization, built over years of watching how land and animals and families interact. Then Axis came into the picture, and the path became clear. A decision was made to take the time to do it right. The founder didn't set out to build the biggest operation in the hill country or the flashiest. The goal was narrower, and in some ways harder. Build something true, something that could be handed to the next generation without apology, without shortcuts hidden in the foundation. That governing principle, the one we've heard echoed in the executive summary and the project charter, didn't come from a business textbook. It came from watching what happens when it's ignored. Ranches that chase quick returns and skip the patient work of genetics and land stewardship tend to look impressive for a season and then quietly decline. The founder wanted the opposite, something that might start small and quiet, but that would still be standing, still be strong, decades down the line. That's where the values took root. Long before there was a written charter, there was a simple conviction: do right by the land, do right by the animals, and do right by the family that would eventually inherit all of it. The Axis deer became the vehicle for that conviction, a species that rewards exactly the kind of patient, generational thinking Hill Country Axis was built around. You cannot rush good genetics. You cannot force land into health overnight. Both require the same thing: sustained, disciplined attention year after year. There's something almost old-fashioned about that approach in an era that rewards speed and scale above nearly everything else. But old-fashioned isn't the same as outdated. The ranches that are still standing a century from now in the hill country or anywhere else will likely be the ones that made exactly this kind of trade, patience over speed, again and again, in small decisions that added up over time. The vision for the ranch grew directly out of that founding mindset. It wasn't about building a brand first and finding a purpose later. The purpose came first. Stewardship, discipline, family, and everything else, the mission, the objectives, the day-to-day operations, was built to serve that purpose. That's why the principles feel consistent across every chapter of this story. They didn't get added later to sound good. They were there from the beginning, embedded in the reasons the ranch exists at all. And so we arrive back where we started, but with a fuller picture. Hill Country Axis is a long-term family enterprise built around Axis deer genetics. That's the executive summary. It operates by a clear mission, vision, and set of values captured in its project charter. And underneath both of those, there's a founder's story about choosing patience over speed and legacy over the quick win. This is only the beginning of that story. In the chapters ahead, we'll walk the land itself, meet the herd, and follow the day-to-day work of turning these founding principles into a living, breathing ranch. For now, consider this your introduction to Hill Country Axis, where it comes from, what it stands for, and where it's headed next.